Welcome to a session which, as you can see behind me, is titled Scalable Solution for Global Problems, Lesson from the Private Sector to Accelerate Climate Gains. Together with me on stage, and I will give them a chance in a few minutes to introduce themselves, is Palmen Rusev, who's a founder and chairman of rewirEd Congress, Kulcit Gataora, who's president for Boeing in Turkey, in the Middle East and Africa, Jacob Harr, who is the founder and chief executive officer of Community Investment Management out of San Francisco, and Michel Peretie, who is the former chairman of Bear Stearns International, the head of the investment bank of Société Générale, and the founder and chief executive officer of Riverrock. This session is about business, so we're going to try to be serious and at the same time entertain you in a way that will leave some memories for you after you've listened to all the speakers. I'll say a few words to set the context of who I am and who I represent. My name is Jerome de Bontin. I'm a partner in an investment firm called Capricorn. Capricorn was founded about 23 years ago to focus on what is now called climate tech. But all along, we've invested in deep tech, in clean tech, essentially in technology that could be scaled and eventually have a serious impact on the environment and the subject that at stake today. We manage today approximately $10 billion, which gives the firm the ability to have a real impact where it invests. We're known in our circles as having been early investors in SpaceX, among the first investors in Tesla, and since then a whole declination of companies in electrification of transportation, battery storage, space, and various other elements relating to the investment that we initially made in SpaceX. The firm was founded by a gentleman by the name of Jeff Skoll. For those of you who follow the internet, you may recall the creation of eBay. And Jeff and Pierre Omidyar were the two founders of eBay. He became the first president, and upon the IPO of eBay in the late 90s, Jeff found himself at a very young age at the helm of about $6 billion. And he decided at that time that he would use that money to do good, change the world, and spend his money in such a way that he would leave a real impact and at some point die poor, and thus created the Skoll Foundation and Capricorn. He also believed that storytelling was one of the pillars of society, and founded at the same time a production company by the name of Participant, with the object of creating and delivering content for the audience at the juncture of arts, education, and activism. Over the years, Participant produced a number of extremely successful documentaries and movies. I'll name a few to set the context. Participant was responsible for the early Al Gore documentaries, movies like Food Inc., and eventually it grew into long feature movies, with movies such as Lincoln, Spotlight, The Post, Bridge is a Spy, Dark Water, Green Book, and a number of others that didn't win the Oscar, but those that I just mentioned did. And in that context, it's a real pleasure that I have to not only represent my partners here today, but also contribute to this dialogue over climate and business. And as you will see, the thing that we touched on are quite different from many of the panel that I may have listened to today. So I will go one after the other. I'll ask a question to the participant, let them introduce themselves in greater detail than I did, and then hopefully answer the question. So I will start with you, Kulcit. In your view, what are the critical skills that today's youth need to be equipped with to build a sustainable future?
Yes, look, thank you. It's just terrific to be here talking about this topic. It's of central importance to the world. climate is the number one issue. So I'm in my role as the president for Boeing in the Middle East, Turkey, Africa, and Central Asia. Really, I'm representing the enterprise, the Boeing enterprise in all these countries, and of course, one of the common issues across all of these jurisdictions, in terms of how the climate issue intersects with aviation, is around the fact that we all know that aviation is a hard to abate sector. Aviation itself recognised that, and as a result, ICAO, which is the organisation which brings together all of the governments, the government regulators on aviation, committed to aviation becoming net zero by 2050. So this was a very firm and strong commitment. The industry is totally behind it, but now it's all about how do we get there? And from the Boeing perspective, we have always believed, and the industry also believes now, that the immediate and long-term solution is the introduction of sustainable aviation fuel. And again, not wishing to get too technical, which actually I can't because I'm not a scientist, I'm actually a lawyer. It's really about fuel that's created from sustainable sources. So here in the UAE, for example, if you look at the very big investments that have been made here in areas such as hydrogen, and it's clear to see that there is a strategy around power to liquid, where you're going to take green hydrogen, use that to create this clean fuel that's going to power aircraft for decades to come. Because the fact is that whenever you introduce a new aircraft type, they're immediately to something like 15 to 25% more efficient from a fuel perspective. You're still going to have a lot of the old airframes around. So sustainable aviation fuel really is what we call a drop-in answer, and why that's important is that you're not changing aeroplane design, you're not changing airport design, and so therefore when you examine the whole life cycle in terms of carbon intensity and carbon impact, it really should get you 80% of the way to getting to that goal. But going back to your initial question and why young people are so important is that we are just dealing with the technology that we know about today. The fact is that there's tons of innovation and there's tons of science and that's being developed in this area as we speak. And so the university partnerships we have in this area are absolutely key. I mean, we're part of an organization called Ascent in the US, which is a collection of top academic institutions that are dedicated to developing technology to address this issue. We have similar partnerships all around the world. Here in the UAE, we partner very closely with Khalifa University, and in fact, we were part of a project that we started 10 years ago that produced biofuel from the biomass that was produced from commercial fish farming that irrigated saltwater salicornia that just grows here. So no impact on the food cycles, and it created an amount of biofuel that we were able to deploy on a flight, actually. So there's a lot of innovation, and in terms of going back to then what skills do you need to develop? It's all the skills that I think we all know. STEM education is key. Critical thinking is key, and again through a lot of our community programs all around the world, we invested something like 20 million since 2012. We've worked with 16,000 young people to really address the knowledge gap that may exist in areas like STEM. In terms of innovation, because of course that's an area that's just going to be crucial for this area, with the hope that it sparks the excitement in the industry and it sparks the interest in the level of opportunity. Because let's not forget, this is a region where there is a lot of youth unemployment, And we are estimating that over the next 20 years, in the Middle East, there'll be a requirement for something like 215,000 jobs in aviation across the whole ecosystem. In Africa, we think it's around 70,000. So these are real jobs, and these are the sorts of jobs that people want to do because they're in areas that are going to be in demand and are growing. So in a way, I answered the question sort of from the top down, but I think you can understand why I did that, because it all just feeds into an overall industry objective, and really, but it has to start from the youth.
Well, thank you, Kujit. Jacob, after I ask you the question, though, don't hesitate to give a little bit of information on your background. And as a matter of transparency, I will just underline the fact that we at Capricorn are a major investor in the activity of Jacob. We have about $60 million invested in CIM. And as you will see, it's very relevant for our talk today. So the question for you, Jacob, is given your experience, indeed, in providing financing to small businesses, how can similar models to the one that you have applied be adapted to support educational initiatives that aim to promote sustainability?
Thank you, Jerome, and nice to be here with you all today. Appreciate it. So my name is Jacob Harr. I'm the founder and CEO of Community Investment Management. And what the problem that we're working on, we're an asset manager based in San Francisco, is essentially one of the key elements that is also impacting the climate crisis, which is income inequality. Right? It's many of the folks who are vulnerable to our changing climate. We've been hearing a lot about the challenges today, whether that's climate refugees or other folks. One of the significant challenges is rising income inequality globally. And it's a lack of access to opportunity. And so what we do at Community Investment Management, or CIM, is we provide financing through innovative financial technology platforms for small businesses, also for students, low-income communities, including, for example, refugee communities who have moved from, for example, Venezuela into Chile, Colombia, Peru, etc. And so one of the reasons why it's quite relevant, because you see, if you believe like I do, that capabilities are equally distributed across the world, opportunities certainly are not. And with a growing and more vulnerable population, especially those who are being affected by climate change and needing to move, retool, learn different skills, etc., education is actually lagging far behind. It's incredible that with as much money that is spent on education, we do not actually have great data around the outcomes that people are achieving based on various different courses of study. So for example, in the United States, there are many schools that are graduating students who have majored in history, have majored in non-STEM degrees, and yet those opportunities are not there. You mentioned the significant crisis that we have regarding youth unemployment, and yet we also, in the Middle East especially, have over-educated in areas for which there are no jobs, right? So it's a question of how can we get data around the type of outcome that education is actually providing for their students. And so the private sector actually has quite a good solution for this, which is around financing people based on the expectation of what type of income they will make after they graduate. And so, for example, if you get a loan to attend a university, you generally are not getting a different type of loan based on your course of study. But some of the things that we have financed, for example, international students who have come to the United States to attend graduate school, who have no credit history and are not able to get financing, we have been able to finance them based on the outcome data of the program of study that they're in. So for example, we've helped a number of international students attend US graduate schools, and 93% of those students would not have been able to achieve that graduate education if it were not for the financing that we were providing. So I think there's a lot of creativity that needs to be done to solve those pain points, but at the end of the day, we do need data on student outcome, and it's something that we need to continue building data sets around, because it is incredible how big of an industry it is, and yet how little data we have on that type of outcome.
Thank you, Jacob. Michel, Still, in matter of transparency, Michel and I have known each other for 40 years. I followed his esteemed career in banking. As I mentioned earlier, he was chairman of Bear Stearns International. Prior to that, he had a long time with BNP and then with Paribas prior to that. So Michel, if I may, how can the lessons learned from transforming the culture and the profitability of financial institution be applied to rewire approaches in the education sector for a sustainable future?
Thank you, Jerome. Very nice to be with you today. Indeed, I've been spending a lot of time in the banking and the asset management industry. Today, I'm the managing partner of an alternative asset management company, which is based in London and in Paris mainly. We focus on providing solutions, financial solutions to SMEs. This is a passion I always had. Financing SMEs is financing the backbone of any type of economies. And who are we when we are actors in the financial industry or bankers? We are first people who are taking risk. And we take risk on behalf of our clients. So I'm going to talk a bit about risk and the financial crisis. The 2007 and 8 and 2011 financial crisis has been the result of several issues. First was excess of debt. Second was mild banking regulation regarding regulatory capital. Then there would be also excess of leverage and excess of liquidity risk. The combination of that has led to the crisis you of course, all know, and has led the regulators to think differently and to strengthen the way financial players will effectively operate throughout the world, and especially in the Western world. So this has been translated into the establishment of the new Basel III, so-called Basel III rules, with mainly three pillars. The number one being the most important, which has to do with capital adequacy and the minimum equity requirement to conduct your business. This has to do with market risk. This has to do with credit risk. This has to do with operational risk. And you calculate a ratio which has to be a minimum of, today, something like 12-13% of your weighted average balance sheet. And also there is something which has been restricted, is the way banks or financial players will operate under leverage. The authorized leverage before Basel III was enormous. Some players banks could leverage their equity 100 times, sometimes more than 100 times, using derivative instruments. So today we operate in a much stricter world, whether we are a bank or an asset manager. The new paradigm, which has been progressively introduced, is a paradigm which has to do with global warming. And there is a soft regulation on top of the Basel III regulation, soft regulation provided by the United Nations, which is called today UNPRI, the Principle for Responsible Investment. And in Europe, it's called the SFDR, which is Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation. Under the European regulation, we have, I don't know if you are aware of that, mainly three articles, Article 6, Article 8, and Article 9, conducting our business when you adhere to the European Social Governance, ESG. So your way you conduct your business, you have to declare which kind of article you are respectful of. And at Riverrock, what we are doing, and in partnership with universities, and we have a lot of young people working with us. We are not a big company. We manage something like 1.5 billion euros. of assets, but we have been always nurturing young people, always having a significant number of interns, and working with universities on models and financial technology. What we have developed in parallel to the assessment, the normal assessment of the risk when you lend money, we are in private debt and private markets. So when you lend money, you want to know who is your counterpart. And so you conduct due diligence, you conduct know your clients, KYCs, and you conduct also, of course, financial analysis. Then you end up with a credit scoring. You score your clients, and then you decide if it's according to your eligibility rules, is eligible or not for a loan. It's the same with the environment and the ESG rules. We score our client according to its ESG behavior in the market. So we have criteria ranked from 1 to 5, and we have a double criteria. Actually, it's impact, immediate impact, how this client is effectively impacting the world with his business in a positive way regarding the transition to the green stage. And the opportunistic scoring, which is how this client is promoting its position and its business in the green environment. And we do that. We are modeling this kind of thing, and we do a credit scoring like we do. You know, you have the MSCI index, you have Moody's or Standard & Poor's, which are giving ratings to the actors of the economy. We do the same regarding ESG rules. And in that role, we are, again, working very, very closely with the academic world, which is very engaging things. A lot of papers have been published, and it is a new dimension of risk assessment. It's not yet in the Basel principles, but my feeling is that at some point, this will be in the new Basel IV, Basel V going forward. This is going to be an important part of the pillars which are imposed to financial players.
Thank you, Michel. And now we'll turn to a new friend, Flamen, we just met today. Do not forget to introduce you so that the audience knows what you do. But I think it's a very relevant question for the thing that you do, or I believe that you do. As a futurist and philanthropist, how do you propose the education sector overcome the scarcity of resources mindset and harness the opportunities presented by technology to achieve the 2030 goals?
Thank you so much, Oliver, and such a pleasure to be here with you. We don't have much time left, but I believe in the personal stories. So I'll start with that. I'm an entrepreneur with several exits, turned into a venture capitalist for one reason: to see meaning of what I do for myself, for my family, for our community, and hopefully for the humankind. The personal story that turned me into what I will share now happened 10 years ago, when our global rewirEd community, which reaches out to over 1 million people in the VC world, in the digeratis, policymakers, etc., got together with a select number from the from the World Economic Forum ecosystem and some others, and hundreds of us departed from Svalbard in Norway, if you know where it is, towards the 80th parallel, with 10 young students from, back then, young students, from a number of universities around the world, who were supposed to be taking notes of what we are going to be discussing on solving troubles and problems we're facing. And then we ended up at the Norwegian Polar Institute, where we realized that there are only 20 meters of thickness of ice, and they melt by the speed of 50 centimeters per year. And the more the temperature rises, the faster they melt, which is not bad when the ice is melting. The problem is that the permafrost down there is the biggest reservoir of carbon dioxide, which for the plants is great, but we have issues breathing it. We exhale it, we don't inhale it. And then we moved to a completely uninhabited island. Oh, by the way, when this happened, and we all realized, two of the young students, I saw tears in their eyes. They saw their future just 20 years from now. And then we moved to another uninhabited island. It all happens on a ship, very beautiful, among the fjords. And then it turned out that those things that we see on the ground are not actually seaweeds, but plastic from all around the world. We filled in 5 very big bags of plastic. I've got 4 minutes. This turned what we have built as an ecosystem back then, because we started rewirEd Foundation back in 2007 as a community to grow entrepreneurship and innovation. We work with governments all around the world, and we have started an innovation platform called the Founders Games, which is a growth stage innovation for companies 30 to 300 million evaluation. And we have gathered the collective intelligence of hundreds of venture capital investors who score those companies in 5 rounds until only from 4,500 per year, only 5 make it to the finals. And we announced these days $6 million award, which will be growing to 50 million next. We give our awards at Davos and here, but what do we award? We don't award the fastest growing companies of the world, even though they are such. We award the fastest growing companies in the world that generate social and environmental change. And we have over 300 venture capitalists from every major VC you think of, and I'm hopeful that many of those here will join us on the road. And this is what we call the collective intelligence. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if your company is awarded a finalist status, you will close a round within the next 4 months of a size between 5 to 50 million. And you will increase your attracted capital in the next 4 years by 6.9 times based on the statistics for the past 10 years. It is these companies that make a difference. And why I care about it? Well, and this is the answer to your question. We are here, by the way, you're all welcome on 10th, where together with Sheikh Hashama, Her Royal Highness Sheikh Hashama, we will be announcing the COPS finalists. You will see the companies that will prove that saving the humankind is a multi-trillion opportunity. We are not here for charity, and we should not be here for charity. It's not sustainable. We are here, and I don't want to die poor. Actually, I'm not in a hurry to die in general, but I'm here to, when I die, I want to make sure that I know I've done something that will leave this humankind in a better shape for the future. And that's where we are focusing our efforts, selecting 5 out of 5,000 almost every year that prove that case. Prove that my money, our money, that have enough carbon dioxide footprint on them, your 10 billion you're managing, you can just calculate how much carbon dioxide they have. And when you invest them, you'd better invest them in the solution that makes sense for the humankind and, of course, makes business for your LPs. That's our goal. That's what we do. And the results are amazing. So to wrap up, I'll give you an example. One of the companies we awarded during World Economic Forum this year in November is called CH4 Global. Yes, many of you know it. CH4 goes for methane, the worst contributor to the pollution when it comes to greenhouse gas. 30% of the greenhouse gas and 30% of the reasons for increasing temperature belongs to methane. Do you know what is the biggest contributor of methane globally? Oil and gas? How many say oil and gas? Cows. 1 million people die of premature death because of methane and the cows, the beef protein that we consume. This company has created a food supplement blocking 90% of methane inside the stomach of the cows, completely healthy for the animal. On the top of it, because methane is energy, it increases the milk and meat production of every animal by 10 to 15%, which represent less, I mean, the price of the food supplement is only 10% of the increase itself. So this company solves both food problems and methane. Most of the SDGs we are trying to solve here is solved by this company. We just raised 45 million for it, and it just signed a contract with South Korea. So we are here to help policymakers realize, and I very much rely and connect to what you say, you cannot solve the challenges we are facing with the means of the past that policymakers still think work. It is us, the innovators, that can solve almost all present issues with the beauty of the innovation that we represent. And all the policymakers, I was listening here for all these days, they still try to solve issues which are 100% solvable, but they still think there are years to come. No, with only one food supplement, we solve 30% of the temperature rise, which means half degree, the one that we are fighting to preserve. And it's already there, FDA approved, patented, and already in production. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm talking to you. We've created a publicly listed entity where we are solving another issue, and I will stop here. It is about the digital divide. The more innovation we present to the world, as we do it for the past many years, very successfully with unicorns, the bigger the digital divide becomes, because traditional businesses are left behind. How do we build a social net? We connected the founders games, and we have 6 million right of first refusal in each and every finalist. So we don't charge the companies to apply, but we have the right to invest in them alongside all the major investors. We connected this right to a publicly listed entity. So now every single person who has never had the right to invest alongside Capricorn, because they don't have 10 billion to manage, but they have their 100 euros or 10,000 euros or 100,000 euros, they buy stocks from the stock exchange, and through our right of first refusal, where we connect at round A, round B, the sexiest rounds in venture capital, which were closed for the masses until today, now they have the right to invest through us and get equity in the future companies that will be the billions and multi-billion companies. And that's how we believe we solve another issue, the digital divide on a large scale. Special thanks to a visionary leader who invited us here, Mr. Tariq, for making this happen. He wants to change education, and we also are here to support that. Congrats on COP for raising 57 billion for 4 days. Phenomenal. So we are at the right path, dear friends. Let's just work together on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Clement.
Thank you, Oliver.
I have to turn to the organizers because I see 0, but we were told we had till 4, so I believe we have 10 more minutes, don't we? Does anybody know? So I'll assume we have 10 more minutes. So I will turn back to Jacob for one more question, and we'll assume we have 10 minutes, so you each have 2 or 3 minutes to answer. From your perspective, Jacob, what are the major barriers and opportunities for the private sector today, especially impact investment firms, in forming effective partnership with educational actors for sustainable development?
Sure. Well, I think, very similar to what you're saying. I think, the impact investing recognizes that there is, in fact, a great investment opportunity in serving people for whom the system is broken. These challenges, whether it's methane or many of the things that Capricorn is doing, some of what you're talking about with Boeing in terms of the future of aviation, we're not doing them just because it's the right thing to do. We're doing them because they're generational opportunities to build businesses to be a part of the future. And so, similar with education, the side of the business that I'm on is really about supporting the types of retooling that we need for vocational training. So, for example, the green economy that is starting to emerge, we do not have the right type of training for our workers in that space. And so impact investing can be intentional around providing the financing for the jobs that are needed for the green economy that is to come. As well as, I think we've seen through COVID, the need for transformative education technology so that people can learn immersively in a different way. And so much of that is around the delivery and perfection of different types of technology for education, which ed tech is now an exploding area of venture capital, for example.
Thank you, Jacob. Gurjit, I'll turn to you. How does Boeing align educational efforts and sustainability, and what role do partnerships play in this process?
Yeah, I touched on that in my first answer, but I think I do want to pick up on some of the comments that have been made here because they're so relevant. I mean, I think the role of policy, policy is going to help, undoubtedly, but innovation and just really great business ideas. You can't wait for policy. You have to move out. And I was very interested that, for example, in our field, Mubadala Capital made a very, very significant investment in a SAF production facility in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're doing there is, again, they're harvesting a plant that actually is detrimental to the food cycles and using that to create biofuels. And they believe that they can get to a place where one of the things that is obviously prohibitive about sustainable aviation fuel at the moment is the cost, and we don't really have a market for it. Mm-hmm. But if they can get that commercially to a place where it's in the ballpark in terms of production, that's a game changer.
Absolutely.
In terms of the types of volumes that they're talking about. So I think that's really important. I think that at Boeing, we if you look at the industry, the aerospace industry, it's actually innovated heavily over the years. So if you look at, say, the Boeing 787, massive jump in technology, use of composite, lighter, stronger materials that, as a result, reduce emissions and fuel burn by 25%, right? Mm-hmm. So this is an industry that's constantly innovated. Obviously, from a Boeing perspective, we work very closely with NASA. We're doing some quite fantastic projects with them at the moment. This sustainable flight demonstrator, which is really looking at this transonic truss-braced wing design, which is just this very, very large wing that, again, testing it to see how much more efficiency can you drive through that kind of an airframe, but as well as looking at hydrogen and the possibilities there in terms of adapting that for future flight, electrification. So all of these areas, I mean, what powers the aircraft, the level of innovation is going to be very high. And again, we look at it what it is now, but of course the partnerships that you have with academia are crucial, because that's where a lot of the research is done. Then the startup environment is crucial. What we're doing is that we're working with startups much earlier than we ever would, because we want to bring them in to the industrial process sooner. Because I think that this whole view of just waiting for these companies to get mature, it's things just move too quickly now, and you want to, and we've got programs. We've got an innovation accelerator program where we're just bringing in terrific startups that are looking at all these areas in terms of electrification and other such aspects. So yeah, I think that at every level, from an industry perspective, it all matters, and it's all going to contribute to huge innovation, certainly in our sector.
A quick question: is Boeing involved in Joby Aviation at all?
No, not in Joby Aviation. We've got actually a company called a subsidiary called Whisk. What we believe at Boeing is that ultimately autonomy is going to be the future for the advanced air mobility, the urban air mobility space, because again, our view on safety is that if a member of the public gets on an air taxi, they should have the same level of confidence as if they're getting on a 737, a 787, an A380, right? And so if you think about it, there's a shortage of pilots right now. So, it's going to be a limiter unless you go to autonomy. So Whisk is actually applying for the certification to be the first fully autonomous, all-electric VTOL. But we are the autonomy partner for Archer.
Okay.
So Archer, as you know, have set up a number of facilities here in the UAE.
Joby, for those of you who've not gone to the Museum of the Future yet, I would greatly encourage you to go. And as you visit, you will see some vision of Dubai 2071 with flying, cars or electric helicopters, and Joby is one of the players.
I really believe we're going to see it in the manned taxis very, very shortly, I think.
Michel, and we have 4 minutes between you and Pavan, so quick answer. What cultural shift do you well, you have 4 minutes to answer then. What cultural shift do you believe are necessary within the private sector to foster more effective and integrated partnership with educational actors?
So the culture shift has already been happening. If I look at my industry, we are heavily pushed by our investors, our clients, who are in demand of adhering, monitoring, and reporting of ESG and responsible investment. We are effectively on a quarterly basis reporting to most of them. You know, they are institutional investors, insurance companies, pension funds, university endowment, government bodies, supranationals. They will not invest in our product or in our funds if we are not respecting these rules, if we are not monitoring them, and if we are not reporting to them. And of course, we are guided by the UN and European rules, and the academic world is working very closely to the finance industry in these issues. Now, to be pragmatic, what do we want to achieve? So we want to achieve a zero carbon emission by 2050. The finance industry has a big role to play in this transformation. But we should not be naive at the same time, because we are 95 countries, I think, in this world, and we have all different goals and agendas. We are partners and we are competitors. And therefore, we have to find ways to determine the minimum common denominator, which will lead us to work together and to achieve this goal. It's not obvious in this political environment when you have a huge competition, differences, developing countries, more developed countries, war everywhere. What do we accept to finance and what do we don't want to finance? And the academic world has also, together with us, a big role to play. When you look today at the environment, why has the world been loving so much oil? In a 1 millimeter of oil, you have it contains an energy efficiency which is incomparable. When we say we will forget about oil and we will transform our global economy into a non-carbon economy, which means that we have to produce an enormous level of electricity to replace this efficiency which is existing. Today we cannot simply do that. We don't have enough capacity in the world, and we will not have for years. So we cannot forget about financing the oil industry. We have to accept in the transition that the oil industry has still to be financed, because otherwise we will not support our economies. And when you look at hydroelectricity is great, but it's limited. Solar is great, but you need to have sun. Not everybody enjoys sun in Europe from time to time. Wind farms, they are mediocre, to say the least, in terms of energy efficiency. So education has to be with technology and new technology. There is only one technology we know today will work, and which we have to accept and to finance, is nuclear. Only the nuclear industry will help the world to change its fossil energy, which we are relying on today, to the non-carbon energy we want to be tomorrow. Nuclear is not obvious. Do you want to have every country in the world to master the nuclear technology? Not obvious. Do we want financial people to finance all nuclear industry? Yes and no. So my message, and I will
coming
finish
from
up on
Frenchmen
this,
talking about nuclear, it sounds great.
to the young generation, which we are heavily relying on, is please don't be too emotional, be rational, and try to have as much as you can a scientific background in order to understand what we are talking about. And because there is no future without new technologies, and these new technologies have to be supported by the finance world.
Thank you, Michel. And I'll turn to Plamen, who didn't have a second question, to conclude the debate.
Oh, that's a big hello. Oh, you switched it up. No.
That's the trick he played on you. Here you go.
Your first question actually was about scarcity of resources thinking. This is the Keynes concept of where the economy is driven by. And my personal belief is that we're already in the era of abundance of opportunities, but it's our own small cages in our brains that prevent us from understanding that. And I completely subscribe to everyone here on that panel, what we said, because we all agreed around innovation is the key to save the humankind. Because planet is going to be great without us. We are the destroyers. Planet will be great. It will be the greenest place in the universe. We are those that destroy it. So why I believe in this, in the abundance of opportunities? Because I'm the symbol of it. I grew up in one of the most, the poorest, but among the poorest families in Bulgaria, in a communism time when my father was anti-communist. You cannot get worse, right? So you have to study 3 times more in order to get -2 degrees, but still get okay, because you should be the example of how things should not be. But this teaches resilience. This teaches understanding that there is always an opportunity where there is a threat. We are, as humankind, as species, we are threatened. But mark my words, 6 years from now, there in the neocortex, which is a small organ like this, it's pyramid, at the top of the organ is the most important decisions of our daily lives are taken. Down below, less important, but still critical for our survival. We will be swallowing, some of us, based on our choices, a nanobot, which will connect to that place. In 6 years from now, mark today's date, it will be already a connected technology, which will make us much more connected. And you hear this from someone whose PhD is artificial intelligence, solving healthcare and social challenges. So you might mark my words. And why it's important? It's important because everything that we say today is actually connected to realizing that it is not only our shareholders in business, it is about survivalism. And once we connect those 2 dots, then we will have economies that grow by a measure of our potential of surviving. And once this becomes the measurement, not the GDP, then we all are going to be safe, that our kids, being homo deus themselves, flying faster than gods, being more powerful than gods, which we are already. I don't want to sound like someone who speaks lies, but think about it. Zeus was throwing some thunders and he was impacting some small places on the planet. Now we can impact half a planet with one stupid bomb and actually wipe up the whole life of it. So that powerful we are. Now we need to be more connected and to put our money where our mouth is. That's what we try to do, and that's why I'll be happy if I see more people here putting their money in that particular area, the future of the humankind. We can make this life much better than it is now, for sure. Thank you so much, everyone.
On this positive note, I encourage you to applaud our panelists today. Thank you very much.